Welcome to In the Envelope, an awards podcast where we are offering you, dear listener and TV watcher, a backstage look at this year's buzziest contenders for the small screen's biggest award. I'm Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, the most trusted name in casting since 1960, and I'm here to give you a front row seat to the 2017 Emmy race. This season of In the Envelope is brought to you by HBO. Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 6 of In the Envelope, a special triple-decker episode where we have 3 wonderful guests talking to us on the show today, but also our last episode for a while, because Emmy nominating ends on Monday, June 26th, the day this episode airs, which means we will be transitioning from the Emmy contenders that we have talked to hopefully some Emmy nominees. The next round, of course, will be the announcement of the Emmy nominations, which will happen on July 13th. You can certainly follow along with Backstage as we watch the results. We're very excited about who's going to get nominated for what. And then, of course, a round of voting where those nominees will duke it out for TV's biggest award, followed by the CBS telecast of the Emmy Awards on Sunday, September 17th. So we have a lot to get through today. Later in this episode, we're going to hear from Amy Brenneman, one of the stars of HBO's drama The Leftovers. Now, just a note about The Leftovers on a purely objective, unbiased basis here. It is the most underrated show, possibly in the history of television, because critics, have acclaimed its storytelling wonders, particularly of its cast, including Amy Brenneman, and it has never been nominated for an Emmy Award. It's not been nominated for many awards, despite being very much a beloved series that I am currently obsessed with. We talked to Amy a lot about what the series means and sort of how to watch it and how she has grown as an actor. Afterward, we are joined by Duplass, who you may have heard of from Amazon's original comedy series Transparent, Jill Soloway's story of a Jewish family going through some changes. Both Amy and Jay were in the 3rd seasons of their show, and both have excellent advice when it comes to being a working actor because they've been on both sides of the camera. Jay is a writer and director who's very active in the indie film world, and Amy was the producer and creator of Judging Amy, which was a show that was based on her life. Both have very interesting things to say. But first up, we have an interview with Freida Pinto, the Indian actress who most probably know from the Oscar-winning film Slumdog Millionaire. That's sort of how she burst onto the scene. But she now stars in Showtime's miniseries Guerrilla, which is about the British Black Panthers in 1970s London, and certainly a side of Freida Pinto that no one has seen before. She plays a really tough-as-nails character named Jazz. We talked a lot about how she approached this character and how it is expanding her horizons as an actor. She's really wonderful. Here's my interview with Freida Pinto. So let's get right into it. Guerrilla, Jazz Mitra. She is something else. I'm familiar with your work, and I was surprised to see such a gritty, just tough as nails side of you. Who is Jazz in your mind? What kind of research and preparation went into creating her?
Yeah, so I think that part of the research is just natural hunger that comes as an artist to want to do something like this. To hopefully be able to, be able to show range and just stretch yourself and excite yourself every day at work. Mm-hmm. So I feel like a part of the training for me personally came from feeling frustrated for 2.5 years almost that people were not writing characters like Jazz. So obviously John Whitley came around and gave me this real gift, And then, of course, once I started getting under Jazz's skin and really getting to know who she was and who she is, rather, I kind of just realized that she and I have so much in common. It's just there is definitely it's steeped in some kind of historical and political relevance, even though these are all fictional characters. None of them. It's a what if drama, so none of this actually happened the way we shown in Guerrilla.
Right.
They're all based off of experiences of real-life gorillas. So part of the research was actually meeting real-life gorillas as well. To be educated about a time in history that I was unaware of.
Absolutely.
Unaware in the sense I did not know that British power movement actually existed. You know, we all know about the American Civil Rights Movement and the American Panthers, but not so much is known about Britain's history in the 70s. So part of it was all the factual learning and learning from Routt himself. And then the other part was finding similarities, you know, and it came more naturally as I started playing this character. This need to want to do something all the time, you know, just to be present and to be doing something as opposed to just talking about it. And I think that shows relevance with what's happening today in the world as well. You know, we've spoken about this for years, that we don't want to ever feel and be under this oppression. And here we are. And now it's time for us to do something. And then you see things like the Women's March that happens. And that is an act of doing something, you know. So, yeah, a lot of similarities between what I felt jazz would possibly go through and what a lot of people are going through even today.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned that you and Jazz have a lot of similarities, but you're finding similarities not just with this show and modern times, but you yourself are similar to her. I'm wondering, what qualities do you two share and how did you kind of harness those?
There are similarities and there's been learnings as well. You know, I think with Jazz, obviously there is this frustration that we see right from the very start of her feeling not included in this entire community. And not just in the entire community being the country, but also within the in-community, she's always the outsider, you know. And I know the feeling of being the outsider so well, coming from India, having a big break in this international film world, not being here and not being there, you know, not having worked in India really, but, you know, also not really being American or being British, you know. So I kind of understand the feeling of the outsider and the need to kind of assert yourself. Now, luckily for me, I did not have to assert myself with guns, thank God for it. And with manifestos and you know, the need to even go out there and present myself and explain myself constantly over and over to people so that they can understand that I'm not the other, that I'm still part of the same big community called the human race. That I think is something that I understand. And I know, you know, as actors, it's so much easier when you can, for me, not for everybody, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself. It's easier for me to extrapolate a feeling that I've had that may not be necessarily the same feeling that Jazz is going through in that moment, or the circumstances might be so different. But the experience is very similar. So I feel, the need to assert myself. And to be honest, even in this lovely 8-year-long career, 9 years actually, career that I've had, there have been times that I feel like people just don't get it. You know, I'm like, I don't want to be that your pretty face in every movie. It's not my desire. It's not my thing. It's not how I perceive myself. And so to even break those boundaries, you've got to go that extra mile and, you know, drive through frustration as well. So I get it in that sense with Jazz, but of course, what's at stake for her is a lot bigger. It's her freedom that's at stake.
Yeah.
For me, it was the personal choice to be doing this, and I'm grateful to be acting. But for her, the stake is way, way, way bigger. And what else? And I kind of feel the other thing about her that I find, you know, for us to have something in common is passion. You know, whatever I take on, I just get so passionate about it that sometimes I end up sidelining and sidetracking everything else. So I kind of feel that would be the focused passion that she has. I do share that with her. Of course, hers is on another level. And that was a learning part of it where I had to kind of look at Jazz and go, wait a minute, I want to do what Jazz is doing in my everyday life as well, but I don't want to do it with anger. I just want to do it with passion.
Yeah. So you were kind of thrust into the limelight with the huge success of Slumdog Millionaire, winning 8 Oscars, and you were nominated for a BAFTA. And I mean, congratulations on that, all of that amazing success.
Thank you.
What is your relationship with awards? I mean, that's such a strange thing to have that be your very first feature film and to then be launched onto the international stage in this way.
I think with that, I can't compare again, because with that, I had no idea what I was doing and no idea what I was being thrust into at all. I literally got plucked out of obscurity in India with 4,000 girls had auditioned, or 3,000 girls had auditioned for the same part, and I happened to get it. And then I was in my first ever film set ever, and hearing words like speed, action, I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And so all of that was such a new learning for me. And similarly, once the film was done, the whole promotion part of it, the campaigning part of it, that was brand new for me. And everything was so fresh and innocent, almost, in a way. And then, of course, once the whole awards run was done, as Danny Boyle put it once and explained, just in a very almost like a fatherly way, explained it to us, saying, this has been a great run, but unfortunately, all of you are a little tarnished right now because you know the game. You know how this goes, And so I kind of felt like, oh my God, that's so true. The innocence that I had with Slumdog definitely is not the same that I'll have going forward, because that, you have to do a couple of things to get your project out there because you believe in it. And, so for me, I think now it's more about just getting people as interested as possible in my TV show, getting people to see this new side to me. But I think everything else, I know how much of it is left up to, a bunch of people voting and chance and whatnot. So that part of it, I kind of, like to not think about, because like I said, the innocence that I had during the first round made me enjoy the process so much more. And I know that's like a long-winded answer, but it's kind of something that I think about and talk about quite a lot, just because it's so true. I don't want to get caught up in the race of trying to get those awards as opposed to trying to get people to first watch it, and appreciate it. And I don't know, just put a great piece of entertainment out there.
So that's true for Guerrilla, in the sense that your job as an actor, in addition to doing the work, of course, and to playing your character, is to get the word out and to do press and, like you said, the campaign and the publicity and all of that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're not going to be fools about this. We know that this is niche subject matter. It's not something that, it's not your typical popcorn, everybody's going to watch because this is, and it's all about the promotions. You think about even Slumdog, for that matter, was going straight to DVD, and then it just had to have this aggressive promotional phase that we went through in order to really get the word out there. We're talking about like complete unknown actors in my first film. So I completely understand the worth of getting word out there, especially when it's material that I feel so proud of and really, really value its relevance, So yeah, for me, this is actually the fun part. I usually don't say that with the promotions because sometimes you end up having to promote a film or a TV show that I'm not entirely proud of, but that's also, duty calls. You got to do it. But with this one, I'm actually super excited to talk. And this is the first time, I've got to be honest with you, this is the first time I sit in interviews and people don't ask me about fashion. And it just makes me so happy. No questions on fashion, no questions on beauty. It's all about the show. It's all about the time period. It's all about the things that I really want to talk about,
That's right.
And the fashion and the beauty have its space, but not while I'm promoting something that I'm so proud of. Yeah.
No. And when you're creating a character like Jazz, you're not thinking about the fashion. It's not necessarily related to is it related to your training as a model at all?
No, not at all, actually. To be really honest, for me, there's a big difference between, for me, just, talking about fashion and talking about costumes. Costumes, which can also be, if you want, clubbed under the term fashion. For me, it's so important because you embody the character when you wear those costumes. So for me, talking about my costumes in Guerrilla is a fun aspect. We're talking about a red carpet gown that I am thinking of for some time in the future is not welcome.
No. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I won't call them rapid fire questions, but I've been asking everyone these. I'm just going to jump into it. Who is, as of this very moment, your favorite actor?
Oh God. Oh my God. I think Yvonne Strahovski from Handmaid's Tale, Dexter. She is.
Absolutely.
That's how you pronounce the name. Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Do you watch your own work? And is that one of your techniques for how you learn about your craft?
I don't enjoy watching my own work because it makes me very, very uncomfortable. But I know that it is the right thing to do for me, at least, and my process. So I watch it in private before I watch it in a public place with other people. You know, so when I do screenings and stuff, and I've got to watch it with a crowd, I have to watch it before that myself. Otherwise, I would faint or something.
Interesting. Yeah. What is great acting to you?
Just being, over time, I feel like for me, acting is not about going out there and acting. I don't know how to put it. I think when you're not present, it shows very well on camera because the camera is such a penetrating force. And everything is amplified 10 times on a big screen, and just with the way that the camera lens captures you. It's very intimidating almost. So I think not being present for me is the worst kind of acting. And, I've been guilty of it at times.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I think that's true of everyone, right?
Yeah. I think that, being present and being in the moment and just being real to that moment is really important, no matter how deeply upsetting or frustrating or joyous the scene might be. It's just, I think being present. And that's something, I never been to an acting school. I've never been trained classically. So for me, that was something I had to learn on the job in a way, that the moments where I'm not present are the moments where I'm my weakest.
Yeah. This question may not apply to you because of your rather strange introduction to the film world, being launched into this huge film. But what is your number one piece of audition advice for actors who are at the beginning of their careers?
Well, actually, it does apply to me because I auditioned, I don't know, for 6 months straight for that film. Sometimes twice every month. I find auditions really strange, and I know how important they are, and it's I call them a necessary evil. But I just find them really restrictive. So for people who restrictive in the sense like you're in a cold dark room somewhere, pretending like you're out, I don't know, on a mountain in, I don't know, the Alps or something. I don't even know. But I kind of feel like the one thing for actors that could possibly help them, with their auditions is to not be afraid to go as far as they want to go and to be as wild as they want to be. Because at the end of the day, you really are showing a side to yourself that, someone has got to go out there and imagine that this is what this person's going to do if they were thrown this kind of a situation. So for me, I feel to not hold back is one of the best things that I have learned through my own audition process. Because sometimes I go in there and I see the room and it's so small and I hold everything in. And when I mean don't hold back, I don't mean go out there and overact the whole thing out. But I just mean to just let yourself really go, to use your imagination and to let yourself really, really go. That for me is the best thing. I don't know. I've never really, again, been to an acting school, so maybe you should ask my acting coach that.
No, that was excellent advice. Yeah. That was acting advice gold.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, Freida. Is there anything else you want to add about Guerrilla or about the upcoming Emmys?
No, I'm just very super grateful to John Ridley, and I'm really proud of him for being so brave. And Idris Elba, actually, who's an exec producer as well. And Showtime, of course, for being so brave to put this material out there. My ultimate goal in my life and my career right now is to just work with brave people, because I don't want to be sitting on the fence like Jazz says actually in the in the first or second episode, second I guess. But yeah, I just don't want to be someone who sits on a fence. I just want to go out there and tell the story as it really needs to be told. And for that, you require brave leaders, and that's what I had in John and Idris and Showtime and Sky Atlantic. So with that.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you continue to do TV and just keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
This episode is brought to you by HBO's original drama series, The Leftovers, starring Justin Theroux and Carrie Coon. Expect the unexpected as this Peabody Award-winning series prepares for the 7th anniversary of The Departure. For your Emmy consideration in Outstanding Drama Series and all other categories. Amy Brenneman is a 5-time Emmy-nominated actor who first broke onto the scene in the ABC police drama NYPD Blue before creating and starring in CBS's drama Judging Amy. From 1999 to 2005, Amy was the creator of that show, and in our interview, she talked a lot about what she learned from being on that side of the creative process. She now stars as Lori Garvey on The Leftovers, HBO's drama series from creators Damon Lindelof and Tom Perrotta. Damon Lindelof of Lost fame, following up Lost with a collaboration with Tom Perrotta, who wrote a novel called The Leftovers, which season 1 was based on in 2014, followed by a season 2 that expanded and continued to surprise audiences and critics, and a recently aired season 3, which many are calling a masterpiece. The same can be said for Amy Brenneman's performance. We were so delighted to talk to her. Here's my chat with Amy. Is it true that you've been, talking about The Leftovers for weeks now that it's in the midst of the final season? Are you just relentlessly plugging the show and promoting it every chance you can get?
I am. Although, I will say this about The Leftovers. Plugging means actually having existential conversations.
Yeah.
It's honestly, you cannot even begin to talk about the show without, hearing about someone's dead grandmother. It just opens people up, opens me up. I think it's this platform for some pretty substantial conversations. So, yes, of course, there's the making sure people watch it, but it's honestly a pleasure to talk about this project.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to just get right into it with Lori Garvey, because she's just a fascinating person as portrayed by you. I'm wondering, who is she? How would you describe her to someone who's never seen the show?
Well, I think Lori was a pretty normal, recognizable person. I think that what Damon always says about The Leftovers, and I'm not actually sure if this is entirely true, but it's sort of amplified who people really, really, really were deep down inside, So we all have personas and covers and societal norms that help us get through the day. And hopefully somewhere, we have very deep connections to know, okay, this is who I really am, So I think Lori, as demonstrated by the flashback episode of the first season, which was the day before the sudden departure, she was pretty recognizable. She was a working mom, pretty bossy, pretty loving with her kids, pretty judgmental of her husband. I think there's a lot of elements that would be relatable. And I think she, as a therapist, as a capable person, as a working parent, I think that she did suffer from the delusion, it turns out, that she was in control of a lot of things that she wasn't. So I think, her bumping into the sudden departure and the powerlessness and the mystery of that has really sent her in a lot of different directions. But I do actually sort of feel, and this is sort of cheesy and I don't want to put a bow on it, but I do feel like the way we're knowing her in the third season and basically the way we will leave her is the kind of the person that she wanted to be all along.
Oh, cool. That's wonderful. And so I know we're in the midst of season 3, but what can you tell us about the finale? What can you tell us about where you think this show will leave viewers who are devoted to it? It's a beloved show. How do you end it?
Well, I definitely, the word catharsis has come up. When I saw the episode where I was featured that's on this Sunday, I'm not always that critical of myself, but I'm very critical of myself watching this, and I'm still parsing out why. I think some of it is the lack of glamour and sort of which we are very stripped down, all of us, so it's like in peace with your face looks and just all that human vanity. And then also I think the bar is so high and I care so much, that I don't know, I find myself being critical in a way that I'm not always, but that said, so I'm having my little, what I call top world thoughts, which is like, I didn't do that well, or I look weird with that. And then literally simultaneously, I am weeping.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, there is actually something bigger than me going on. And I think that, again, like I love studying rituals from different traditions, and I think that when they are, when religion doesn't wound people, and that's a big if, they are the most beautiful, theatrical, transformative experiences because it leads you to catharsis, right? It leads you out of the chatty, I studied Buddhism, so we're all up here in the top world, chatty, judgments, opinions, to-do lists, right? What leads to a couple clicks down where we can actually connect with our humanity. And it's hard to do. And I think Leftovers does it. And that's why and it's very unique. And that's why people don't want to go.
Well, and when you were first getting involved with the show, how did your relationship with religion, how did majoring in religion and studying it affect your decision to do it or affect your choices you make as an actor?
Oh my God, it was like, there's never shows like this. Never shows that in a very playful, unpedantic, genuinely unanswerable way say, this is what it's like to be a human being, and the whole thing of like, it would crack me up. It's like, are we going to find out what happened? Are we going to find out what happened? I'm like, I don't even know how my toaster works. Like we live alongside mystery all the time, and we go into denial about it or we accept it, but we live alongside mystery. Obviously when ourselves or a loved one gets really ill, when a child dies, that's where it kind of like, wow, why did this happen? But the truth is every single day, we are accepting of powerlessness and mystery. And then it's basically, if we're okay with that, with our style of doing that, people are more and less comfortable with it. I'm more and less comfortable with different things I'm powerless over. When it comes to my kids, don't like that feeling. When I'm sitting by the ocean, it seems appropriate. There are so many things outside of our human ego. So anyway, all that said is this conversation you and I are having, this is the kind of conversation I had the first time I met Damon Lindelof. I was like, I'm in. I'm totally getting stoned in a college dorm. It doesn't feel like a job. So all of that, I felt very, very ready for it. And then honestly, I think that like I had read this book by Reza Aslan called Zealot, and I turned Damon onto that. And Reza really talks about sort of the bone. What does it take in a culture for a new religion to arise, right? And it's actually pretty formulaic. It takes a certain amount of existential anxiety. It takes a kind of circus atmosphere. Also you have false prophets, there's real prophet. All of the stuff that Damon just ran with in the second and third seasons, especially.
I love that. I don't even know how my toaster works. It's so true. There are mysteries, everyday life. Yeah. So I want to ask about your relationship with awards, because you are in the interesting position. You're a 5-time Emmy nominee, and that's for NYPD Blue and for Judging Amy. And so Judging Amy was a really groundbreaking female-led drama with you at the helm in more ways than one. And so what was that journey like to go from a guest role on NYPD Blue all the way to helming what was then sort of more of a rare occurrence?
Well, it still is. Les Moonves just got nailed for the lack of females on. I was like, shit, come on, Les. It would transform my life. I mean, in many, many ways. First of all, in this journey that we all have, and women may have it a little bit more, actresses may have it a little bit more, but this journey towards self-determination, right? Toward really saying, you know what, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do, and the chips are going to fall what they may. And all the kind of authority figures, usually male, going like, you should do this and you should do that. So nobody thought I should create a show, really, except for my husband and my manager at the time. I mean, it was sort of, but I was like, whatever. Like, I of course, I can always go back to just being an actor for hire. But I came from a collaborative theater company, and I really love being in the leader, not really being the sole leader, but I love being in a leadership council, if you will. So there was no expectations on us, and we just had all this freedom. So I had the delicious experience of when I would see a script or an episode, I would think, yep, that's exactly what was in my head. And then obviously I fall to my knees in front of Barbara Hall because I was not writing the thing. You have to find the right collaborators. So the fact that we were on air was a miracle. The fact that people watched us was a miracle. And then when the award stuff happening, it was so gratifying of like, oh, my voice, I have something to say in this culture that's kind of heading over the transom. Now, that said, it was like an obscene amount of work. And I was in my, mid-30s at the time. So I also had to bear 2 children. So I was, when that ended and I was hugely pregnant with my son, I thought I would like to. Now I'm in a great position where I get to produce sometimes, but I also really appreciate not producing. So private practice was just the perfect job, and ensemble and Shonda and all that stuff. But I think the way it has forever changed me doing Judging Amy is I just assume that part of my job is to create material and create content. So, the idea of sitting around and waiting for the phone to ring, I've never done that anyway. And with arguably my biggest success coming from my own head, I just never wait for stuff to come to me. And when it does, it's a nice surprise, but that's not, and I also live with a writer-director. So we're just always dreaming up new stuff.
Well, that doubles as excellent advice for Backstage users, because it is true that waiting by the phone for opportunity to ring is not as effective as creating those opportunities yourself.
Well, it's fun too, and it's really, and then the when you do go into an audition room, you just don't smell desperate, and you have a rich and full life. And I mean, I'm a collaborator by nature, so when I struggle sometimes it's when my collaborators are busy or I'm betwixt and between. It's hard. Although now I can motivate a little bit more on my own, but I really come alive. I really spark when I have somebody to bounce stuff off of.
You mentioned the audition advice. Do you still go on auditions?
Not a ton. I mean, there's less stuff that I'm right for / interested in. I would say most of the stuff tends to be a meeting. Every once in a while, I get an offer outright. But frankly, I like those meetings. Like, my favorite thing is an offer pending a meeting, because like, what if I don't like them? You want to, I have dogs. You want to sniff each other out. Also, here's the deal. I'm a producer. I sit many times on the other side of the casting thing. Right. So it's not a personal thing. It's like, oh, I've never seen that person do that kind of material. Let's see them, So I think once you start to produce or, sit on the other side of the casting thing, you take a lot less personally.
Yeah.
It's nice. So when I show up as an actor, I have a little bit more freedom around me.
Yeah. I mean, is that something you recommend for early career actors in the audition room?
I do. Yes, I think actors that I know who were readers for casting people, it's invaluable, because you literally are kind of watching, you usually don't audition side by side with other people. So it's almost like seeing different styles, what works, what doesn't. It's all pretty nuanced, I mean, how much to chit chat when it's like being at a party, when it's time to, I mean, hopefully the casting director will always kind of steer the room too. But I like to, I mean, there's the material, and that's important, but I love the chit chat as an actor, and then also as a cast when I'm casting, because you're gonna get in a relationship with somebody. So senses of humor, obviously, if you understand one another. My husband, who is a director, I don't often give. Sometimes I do, but I don't often give adjustments in auditions, but he does. And sometimes, even if somebody does something that's sort of spot on, he'll give an adjustment just to see if people can take direction, and if they, if we all speak the same language. You're kind of, there's a lot going on in that room.
Absolutely, yeah.
I remember doing the movie Heat, and I remember looking at De Niro. And De Niro, honestly, in person, at least when I was working with him, it's not like his acting. I mean, he's just like a crazy genius with the camera. It's more like when I saw the film, like, oh, he's doing all this stuff. In person, he's just kind of like an adorable buffoon, But one thing I noticed immediately was how comfortable he was and whether the cameras were going or not. And I remember he dropped his sides, or he said, "What's the line?" I mean, stuff that I do all the time now, but I just hadn't been in front of a camera enough. And judging Amy really changed that. And also, I was my own boss, so I wasn't trying to please anybody. And I think that's always a existential, like, aha moment.
And what about your advice for, as a 5-time Emmy nominee, how do you tell people who are about to enter that limelight? What do they need to know about the hitting the red carpet, the showing up and doing press? Like, do you have any advice for people who are about to hit that level?
Well, it's funny. When I first did I swear to God, it was one of the first times I did a red carpet. Mm-hmm. And I am not a fashionista. I'm more like, it's funny, Al Pacino and I once had that. He totally got my number. He was like, "Oh my God, you're like from the 70s. You're like the Ally McGraws and Catherine Ross." And I was like, yeah, my whole thing is, which is why Leftovers is so great for me, is how much can I strip down? Like that's the high wire act for me. So I'm not my friend Kate Walsh, like, loves clothes. She looks amazing in clothes. And I was like, "Oh man, you're amazing." I've made my peace with it. Absolutely. But I never was a little girl thinking about, beautiful clothes. And I'm not putting that down. It just wasn't my jam. Mm-hmm. So the first time I did a red carpet, I remember, I can't really describe it, but my feeling as I was on the red carpet was like, "Aw, shucks," sort of humble. Uh-huh. And the pictures were terrible. They were terrible. It's like my shoulders were sort of slouched. I was apologetic. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, "Oh, okay, if you do the red carpet and you're an actor, pretend you're a supermodel. Because the clothes are going to look great, the pictures are going to look great, and you're going to feel self-conscious for all of 20 seconds. But if you're going to bother to do a red carpet, like, pretend it's a catwalk and act it up, so that kind of helped me." And then I remember looking at, actually Sharon Lawrence, who became a good friend of mine, and she, oh my God, we were on the red carpet for NYPD Blue, and she looked unbelievable. Like, she had this way of twisting her hips, and their clothes looked great. And I was like, "Jesus, like, where did you learn this?" And she was like, "Well, I'm a Southerner. We had like fashion shows." I was like, "Oh, I'm the kid of lawyers. Like, I don't know jack shit about this." But I sort of copied them and found my way in. So I didn't feel like a phony. I felt like,
Gotcha. That's excellent advice. That's so interesting. I mean, my next question is, what is great acting to you?
I think great acting is about surrender and generosity. I think it's really how much you can give to the audience and to your fellow actors. I mean, my transcendent, memorable, take to my grave moments are always when something unexpected happens. And it usually has to do with me trusting another person, director or another actor. Tyne Daly once said this great thing where we were at the beginning of a season, and she can do anything, and she's just unbelievable. And we were like maybe the third or fourth episode in, and I said, "You having a good season so far?" She said, "Yeah." And she'd been doing like impeccable work. You go, "Oh my God, I would dream to do that work." She said, "Yeah, but I haven't really been surprised yet." So I think to be surprised, especially when you've been acting as long as she has, and I'm getting up there too, means you're letting go. You're working out your stuff, and then you're letting it go entirely. You prep it, and then you let it go.
Yeah, cool. Well, and I wanted to ask, like, what is the secret to the longevity in television and being able to reinvent yourself on the small screen over and over again? And it sounds like that's it. You're looking for something to surprise you.
Yeah, and you're looking for new challenges, and I think for me, there was the first season of Leftovers when I was in the college, and I, really, no joke, couldn't wear a stitch of makeup, and I was going through a lot with my vanity. I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, also because I just came from a Shonda Rhimes show where we're very glamorous, and I was trying to be. That was my couple months of my experimenting with being, it's like, "Oh, I'm going to be a smart movie star," so I'm going to wear a little eyeliner and nobody will know, or I'm going to get a little manicure and I swear to you, every single time I did anything like that, I would get a text from Damon back in LA looking at the Daily saying, "I see what you're doing. Like, you cannot, it pops us out of the material if we smell Lori's vanity. Like that's the whole thing. She's in a cult, right? So I was really, I was like, oh my God. And then Mimi Leader came on our 5th episode of that first year, and then she stayed with us, and she just said, trust me. And I said, okay. And I realized I am not smart enough to hold protecting myself and doing what Damon has hired me to do. So I'm going to let go.
Wonderful.
And I was like, maybe I won't be able to watch this one. I don't know. Maybe my vanity will. I don't know. But I have been hired to do a job, which is to render this material. And what I'm really doing is sneaking around, trying to protect myself. And I can't do both.
Absolutely. That's excellent acting advice.
Right?
Yeah. Backstage listeners this is pure gold for them. So thank you. Well, Amy Brenneman, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by HBO's original limited series Big Little Lies, starring Nicole Kidman, Reese Witherspoon, and Shailene Woodley. Told through the eyes of 3 mothers, Big Little Lies paints a picture of a town fueled by rumors, conflicts, secrets, and betrayals. For your Emmy consideration in Outstanding Limited Series and all other categories. Jay Duplass is a film director and writer and producer. He and his brother Mark are the Duplass brothers. They're very active in the indie film community. But as we discussed in our interview, Jay is becoming better known as an actor because of his casting as Josh Pfefferman in Jill Soloway's Amazon comedy Transparent. The series is about a trans parent, which has won the Golden Globe Award for Best TV Series Comedy, as well as several Emmys, including for its star, Jeffrey Tambor. Jay stars as Josh. He gives a really spectacular performance, and we talk a little bit about being on both sides of the camera, and also how promoting Transparent is about trans activism. And by appearing on red carpets, and by promoting the show, and by the show winning awards on its own merits, it is promoting trans actors, trans characters, and trans stories. This year, in fact, season 3 of Transparent, Jay and his castmates saw it as an opportunity to help support Gavin Grimm, another trans activist. And he is a veritable goldmine of actorly advice. So here it is, my interview with the one and only Jay Duplass. Your work on this show is just really, really stirring and really beautiful. And I feel like Josh just expands each season into a more and more painful and haunted, but also funny and touching character.
Gosh, thank you. Can we end it right now?
Yeah, we're done and we're good. Why don't you take us back to how did you get involved in Transparent in the first place? This is one of your first big acting credits.
Yeah, it really is my first, big acting job.
Mm-hmm.
I've mostly been a writer, director, and I've actually been the camera operator on a lot of the stuff, or all of the early stuff that my brother and I have created. Honestly, I had friends who were like, "Hey, maybe you should act. You seem pretty open, and it seems like you're pretty easy with your emotions and stuff." And I was like, "Well, I'm literally physically behind the camera. I don't really know how to get out around it. It's part of like the culture of how my brother and I make movies." And
mm-hmm.
I was at a party for directors about 4 years ago, and Jill Soloway was at this party,
mm-hmm.
who is the creator of Transparent, and she had just made this movie Afternoon Delight, and I was a big fan, and we were just talking, and as directors do, she was like telling me her woes with this great TV show she was about to make. She had the whole family, but she didn't have the son or the brother.
Oh, cool.
And I was, she was like, I need like a wildly insecure / confident mid-30s Jewish guy. And I was like, oh, I know all the guys.
Yeah.
I know them. They're all my friends.
Right.
And so I was, going through a laundry list, just trying to help her, come up with the best casting options. And she had really thought of everyone. And she kind of gave up on it. And we talked for about 30 minutes. And about 30 minutes into the conversation, she froze and she stopped and she said, "It's you."
Oh my gosh.
She
really?
said, you're him. And I got like white lightning and chills all over my body. And I was, and my initial response was, "No, I'm not an actor."
Right.
I have my own TV show. I was just starting my television show with HBO called Togetherness that I was like writing and directing, and we were doing everything on that show. So I was like overwhelmed, and she said, "Listen, you're going to come in tomorrow and you're going to read with the two daughters, sisters." And I said, "Okay, I guess so." But there was I was really resistant, and I went and I read, and it was amazing what happened. It was like lightning struck in that moment. And, we improvised, and Gabby and Amy and I all have really close sibling relationships. So we know what that is. And we were kind of messing with each other. And, it was really sweet and funny and heartbreaking the way that Transparent is. And I looked over at Jill at the end of it, and she kind of was like raising her arms with this look of almost like, who are you to deny this thing that happened,
Cool.
Yeah, it was, so I did it. But I still even thought like, well, I'm going to do a web show on Amazon. I mean, like no one's going to see it, like this is where you buy your toilet paper. It's not where you watch shows.
Yeah, back then. That's right. Yeah.
So for me, it was more just an experiment. And then, literally 6 months later, we won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy, and everything changed.
Amazing. And the Emmys out the wazoo, and continue with the Golden Globes and all of your recognition. You yourself you were nominated for a Critics' Choice Award. Very, very well deserved.
Thank you.
That's amazing that it was an epiphany that hit Jill. I mean, was it because you were just having a conversation with her about your life and she just saw the way that you talk and the way that you are as a person?
I know. Yeah, I think in retrospect, I mean, I don't think she really even knew, other than like this intuition, which is how she works. And that's the best part of it. I mean, later we've talked about it a lot, obviously, like, oh my God, can you believe that almost didn't happen, know?
Right.
And we've talked about, certain things like, I'm a very, I make my own stuff, and I'm pretty ruthless, and I will stop at nothing to create my own things. So there's like a sort of like tough, like executive part of me, but I'm really just a softie. And I think in retrospect, I think she was looking for somebody who was a softie ultimately to play Josh, because, she was like, 90% of what he does, especially in that first season, is really like crushing people, And the 10% is just like full blown emotional vulnerability and release. And, I think she was like, that was, even though that was only 10% of what we saw that first season, that was like the key to the character. And since then, that's what it's become more and more of. Like, it's almost hard to shake, because I tell people sometimes that Josh hasn't had sex on screen since season 1, and they're like, "What are you talking about? He has sex with that?" It's like it's already built into their minds.
Yeah.
I think in seasons 1 and 2, a big thing that happens to Josh is he meets Rabbi Raquel, and it's such a huge. It's like for him, I think he sees it as she's so good, like everything in his world is just like mired by like passive aggression and ulterior motives and really having no being ungrounded because he wasn't parented ultimately. And he, Rabbi Raquel to him is like, I guess, just this magical portal to goodness. And it's probably the first age appropriate relationship he's ever had in his life.
Right.
And he really goes all out towards her, but they have a miscarriage, and he doesn't handle it well because he has no life skills whatsoever, and it falls apart. And I think that's part of what we see in season 3 is the falling apart of Josh. And there's a moment where it's acknowledged that that the rabbi has moved on from him, like she's with another guy, and he loses it. And the closest connection he has is a trans girl, Shay, played by Trace Lysette, who is in his Mappa's circle of friends, and they just have chemistry is all he knows, you know. She also probably is like the most gorgeous girl, you know, Josh has ever been around, you know, or any of us. And so, you know, I think it's like he, in the early season, he's like sort of like toying with that. What would that be like? Or that chemistry. They hang out at like family functions together. But when he realizes that the rabbi has moved on, he shows up at the strip club, Sylvain, where Shay dances, and, you know, immediately they both know why he's there, and they're both having a hard time, and everything clicks for both of them, and they're in a car off to the, you know, to run away together. And it's interesting. I mean, it's a very new and unprecedented story from what I've been told. It is as far as we know, you know, the first love storyline where a straight man is just simply interested in a trans girl as a girlfriend, not as a fetish. Not as you know, a hidden sexual desire that he's not sharing with the rest of the world. He just like really likes this girl. One of many barriers that I think Jill and this show have broken in the course of 3 seasons. Many barriers have been broken, and what I love about it is, you know, that affair and that relationship goes tragically wrong, but it actually isn't because of ultimately isn't because of Shay's transness. It's more because of Josh's Pfefferman-ness. Pfefferman-ness. Which and that's what I love about Jill, is that, you know, people may come to watch Transparent because they're curious about the inner world of trans people, and then, you know, 2 episodes later, they're just watching a show about a family that's just as fucked up as yours is, and they forget all about it. And I think that's what's what's revolutionary about the show. Me personally, it just blows my mind when, like, this, you know, the bathroom stuff was happening in North Carolina, where I'm like, I think you should know at least 10 trans people before you have an opinion about what they can and can't do. Like, you should at least know them. You know, that was like my main thought. And then I was starting to think about Transparent, and it's like, oh, wow, that's a way for people to know trans people. Amazing. And as you said, that you and getting involved in this project, and maybe everyone getting involved with this project, did not know that it would be such a huge critical and commercial success, correct? Oh, God, no. We knew it was special. We knew the connections were special. We knew the story was special, but we didn't know where it was going. And I mean, it was a web show. That was, you know, and you remember I mean, you know, 5 years ago, you remember when people were like, watch my web show, you were like, oh God, I had to click on YouTube and watch a commercial before, you know, that was like the feeling, you know, and now it's like, I mean, you know, and now Amazon is like a titan, absolutely. You know? But we did not really know. We just knew we were making a really cool show in our neighborhood. But, you know, since then, and now it's at the forefront of the civil rights movement, which is just, you know. That's so exciting. It's so rare. The sense of purpose that we have going to work every day. You know, I mean, like the first day of production, Jill stood up and she said, I am making this show so that I can make the world a safer place for my parent, you know. That feeling is not lost on anyone at any point in time, you know? It's that thing of how being an actor it carries a lot of responsibility with it, right? Or I guess any storyteller. Any storyteller, for sure. I mean, I know Jeffrey for sure. He feels a lot of pressure, you know, like he feels a pressure to get it right. He knows that being, you know, a cisgender male playing a trans person is not, it's not to be taken lightly. You know, and he really, there's a lot of pressure on him. And, you know, I also like similar, I mean, I don't have nearly the pressure that he has, but I think also like as Josh, I often push or take it on to say the stuff that people are scared to say the PC things,
right?
You know,
sure.
And to call it out, to be that straight white male who's saying the wrong stuff and getting scorned for it and getting a little beat up for it, because it's important, because that's a voice that is the voice of most of the rest of the world, and it needs to be said.
Right.
You know,
it's usually the dominant voice. Yeah.
Yes, it's usually the dominant voice. So, you know, it's like as much as it might be painful to like say some of the things that Josh says and perform some of the actions, they need to be said so that people can see them in the proper context, which is the context of humanity and how it makes other people feel and how it affects other people's experience in the world.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I want to ask about the awards circuit side of things, because as you mentioned, as you put it, this show went from a tiny little passion project to launched onto a much bigger stage at the moment that it won the Golden Globe, right?
Yeah. So
as the show continues to get very deserving Emmys and Golden Globes and all of this, I mean, is there a plan of attack? Do you guys have meetings about how to quote unquote campaign for awards, or how important is that to you?
We use awards to message for trans rights more than anything.
Cool.
So we do have meetings, and usually it's Jill gathering around us and saying, you know, like 3 months ago when we were starting shooting season 4, we were doing a lot of behind the scenes we redirected it all towards supporting Gavin Grimm and his fight, you know, to
Wonderful.
Use male bathrooms at his high school. And so for us, we try to use it as a platform, and we use all of our +1s and our tickets at these award shows to invite the trans community to the award shows so that they can be seen and they can be heard on the red carpet. So, I mean, it really, our whole sort of approach is one of social activism in terms of giving voice to marginalized voices. And because Jill is so incredibly revolutionary, not only in her art making, but in her own process, you know, our show is, you know, we have a gender neutral show, and there are several trans people on our crew and several, you know, people whose gender is not, they're not checking a binary box. So we that is a huge part of just, you know, trying to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing it's not true of many shows that I think their relationship with awards is a form of, as you say, social activism. It's super exciting.
Yeah. And everyone is involved. Like, you know, my wife's a social worker, and like this whole past year, I've brought Trace Lissette as my date because people need to know who she is.
Totally.
She's
remarkable.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
And so people need to know, and it's something that wouldn't happen otherwise. So it's something that, you know, weirdly, like everyone that is connected to the show is proud of. So, and it also, sometimes when you go to a lot of award stuff, you start feeling a little gross about like, oh, is this, you know, like how many red carpets can I do and how many outfits can I wear? And, you know, when you're truly using your privilege to give underprivileged people a leg up, it just, the whole world gets better, you know? And it's interesting too, because you know, they might not get the invitations, but when they show up, like the press is there. I mean, like I was at MTV Awards with Trace, and we were in a photograph that got posted as like the top. Let's put it this way. I was in a photograph that got posted like the top 20 hottest people, you know, and I would not have been in that top 20 if Trace had not had her arm draped over my shoulder. So, you know, it definitely like it benefits all parties, and it also just like keeps the family together, and it's such a love fest.
Yeah. Who is, as of this moment, your favorite actor?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have like little nuggets of favorite people. I mean, I just have to say Meryl Streep, because I think she's the greatest actor that's ever lived. Sure. Like her body is a portal for anything that can happen. But let me think about very specifically, I'm just going to go with her. Sorry. If I get another one, I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Steve Zissou is probably my favorite actor. He's my best friend, and he was the lead in Togetherness, our TV show.
Mm-hmm. Those are two very different actors. That's awesome.
Two very different actors. Yep.
What was the last TV show you watched? I'm sure you watch a lot of TV.
I do watch a lot of TV. I'm obsessed with The Americans. I'm obsessed with Search Party, and I'm obsessed with Baskets. Those are my three. I just can't get enough, can't gobble enough of those up. And I love The Crown this year.
Oh, very cool. What a great little smorgasbord of shows that you just listed. That's wonderful.
People need to watch Search Party. Nobody knows about it. Right? It's on PBS. It's so genius. Good. I just want to tell people it's like a millennial David Lynch comedy.
Yes.
Is what it's like a David Lynchian, it's like a funny David Lynchian, like Twin Peaks made in New York City by millennials. Yeah. And it is so funny and so addictive. I love it.
I spent that whole show just wondering how on earth is it balancing that between everything you were just saying, all of those different elements. It's somehow like a laugh out loud satire about millennials, but also genuinely scary and genuinely suspenseful. And I don't know how they did it.
So funny. Because John Early is the funniest human being on the planet. That's the other takeaway. John Early, if you don't know who he is, he's the funniest human that's currently living.
When are you going to work with John Early?
I worked with John Early on Beatrice at Dinner, this movie that Miguel Arteta directed. That's coming out very, very soon. That's
right.
And,
cool.
And I'm going to work with John Early on something else, but I can't say what it is.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I'm only working exclusively with John Early now.
As you should.
Yeah,
that's
people
such a great
pitch me
actor.
shit, and I'm like, is John Early attached? Then please get out of my face.
He is. He's the funniest. This is a really broad question, but what to you is great acting?
It's just being true in the moment. That's it. I mean, I think, there's a lot of things to do with acting and a lot of places to go and places to explore. But I think, I don't know, for me, it has to do with a truthfulness of being, and not trying, like just a true, like I would rather someone just be real and do nothing. It's so much more riveting to me than someone who is doing a million things, but there's like nobody home,
Right.
So it's like the more that I can like feel the truth of their spirit, I mean, Mark and I always say when we're directing our stuff is like, you might have a scene where somebody comes in and they're supposed to be peppy all day, but that actor is really depressed because something happened. And if you try and make them be peppy, you're going to have a weird, messed up result. And it's not going to feel true. But if you acknowledge that they're depressed and you acknowledge that maybe this might be a depressed, peppy thing and you can make it work, then you might have some kind of gold that is so complicated and deeply understood by the audience. But I think that's what
very cool.
That's what I want. That's what audiences want. It's like your true self on some level in every little moment.
Well, wonderful. That's excellent advice. Thank you so much, Jay.
Oh gosh, thank you. This is fun.
Yeah. And keep breaking legs. I can't wait to see season 4. What can we expect from season 4?
Well, season 4 has a really big secret in it that we are not allowed to talk about. But I will say that as different Pfeffermans tend to cohabitate with each other, Josh and Shelley, his mother, have a return to form where at the beginning of the season, Josh is taking care of Shelley at his apartment. And it is, it's like 2.5 Men meets Golden Girls meets Jill Soloway High Art. It is really funny and really tragic in the best ways. So
that sounds amazing.
That's the starting point and what I'm really excited about.
Well, I can't wait to be reunited with the Pfeffermans. And I know we're all really looking forward to it. So Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Have a great day today.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us, Jay, and thank you also to this week's guests, Freida Pinto and Amy Brenneman. Thank you to all of our guests for these first episodes of In the Envelope, and good luck. Or, as they say in the theater, break a leg. Maybe good luck is bad luck to say. Emmy nominations are approaching, and we have our fingers crossed for you. And congratulations on making wonderful seasons of wonderful television. Be sure to stay tuned for more, listeners, for more from the front lines of the 2017 Emmy race. This is not goodbye. This is only goodbye for now. Be sure to like, rate, subscribe, leave reviews, share with all of your friends, working actors and non-working actors alike. In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City. Thank you to both. Thank you, of course, to podcast whiz Jamie Muffett. You can follow him on Twitter at JamieMusicNYC. You can follow me, Jack Smart, on Twitter at JackSmartWrites. Thank you, as always, to the team at Backstage, the most trusted name in casting. That's Peter Rappaport, Ryan Remstad, Jesse Balashak, Francis Ramos, Rawaan Alkhatib, and especially the completely amazing, I could not have done it without her, Kasey Howe. For awards and industry coverage, head over to Backstage.com. Thank you for listening, and stick around for more In the Envelope. Amy Brenneman is one of many actresses who I now want to be my mom. We're not going to... Should we include that?
Yes.
I think maybe that was great. I don't know.
Are there any actresses that you don't want?
Are there any actresses who I don't want to be my mom?